all Trump's housing ideas are no good. They're not going to work. And I'm going to talk about a plan that I believe will work. I've been working on this plan for a long time, and I think that it's something that would get people to move. Right? You have a lot of issues with people wanting to leave those 3% mortgages and move it to a 6% mortgage. It makes no sense, right? So there's things that you can actually do that are realistic that I think are going to be what we need them to be for the people that need to move. Like we need to get this housing market moving, right? As a furniture maker and a company that owns a paint and furniture company, it's very important that the housing market is moving because honestly, the issues that we have right now are most of your housing people are excuse me, the people in the housing market that are buying and purchasing homes today are going to be your wealthier types. And while that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. It limits the scope of people that are able to purchase homes. So I'll give you guys a couple stats real quick on exactly what's going on in the housing market today. So the important stat to know, I think, is that the average age for the first-time home buyer today is 41 years old. And 41 years old, I mean, that's like you're done having kids at that point. It's like the whole point of buying a home is to raise a family, have kids, all that kind of stuff. And if the first time you're able to buy a home is 41 years old, like that window is almost completely closed. So it doesn't make any sense. So what can we do to fix this problem, right? So we have a situation right now where the Trump administration keeps pushing these issues that are fantastic for home builders, right? They're absolutely fantastic for banks. They're not very good for the consumer, right? So the plan that I have is actually pays for itself and it only grows in cost if you grow transactions, right? So let's get a few more stats here. So this whole Trump plan is basically he has this idea of essentially you're going to rent to own. Okay, so you're going to go to someone like Pulte Homes or Lennar or DR Horton, and you're going to go there and you're going to essentially rent your down payment, right? So you'll sign a contract, buy this home, and then you're going to rent that down payment. So if you buy a $500,000 home, say your down payment ends up being 25 grand, you're going to pay for the down payment, right? So odds are you'll end up paying 2,000, 2,500 bucks a month, right? And when you pay that money, 1,200 of it is going to go towards your down payment, right? And once you've completed this down payment period, you'll then have the opportunity to purchase that home. And who knows what the terms of the purchasing are going to be. So it's not exactly sort of looking for exciting, right? I don't feel good about this, So that's one thing they're proposing, right? The other thing they're proposing is they're proposing this 50-year mortgage, right? 50-year mortgage is a horrible idea, right? Because the truth is like if you're a bank, right? Do you want to give someone a 3% interest rate or do you want to give someone a 6% interest rate, right? Where do you make the most money? And I don't know if you guys have ever looked at mortgage statements, right? But the truth is that when you own a home, you don't really start making meaningful progress on your principal till you're about 7 years in, right? So most people are paying the bulk of their payments for the first 7 years strictly to the bank for interest, right? And you're paying PMI on top of that if you did put down 20%. And you have to pay all the property taxes and the mortgage. You're essentially paying to protect the bank to give you something for a high interest rate, right? They get paid off first. Hopefully, you can keep your home. So okay, so what's the plan that I've been coming up with, right? What is this thing that I've been working on that I think would actually move the housing market? And again, I say this with a little bit of bias because I do own a furniture company. We make a lot of furniture here in America, American-made furniture. I have an incentive to want the furniture industry to move. So who am I? What am I? My name is Eric Wilkin. I own the Splendid Crow here in St. Louis, Missouri. We are a fine furniture boutique company. We also are known for our high gloss lacquer coating. The finishes, you can see your face in them, right? They're really shiny ones. We do those. It takes a lot of labor, but that's what we do. We employ about 8 people right now. We do a small 7 figures. And me and my wife have worked in this company for 10 years now, And so the people that have worked for us have worked for us for a long time. We don't generally move employees very much. So I'm also a big advocate for small business. Small business is, of course, a little bit of another thing that I have a bias towards. I want more people to start small businesses. I want more people to be able to have something they can pass down to their kids or something they can bring into their kids. So that's that. So that being said, all right. So what is this? I wrote on here. We've got a 2% tandem home loan. Okay. What is a 2% tandem home loan? Okay. The thing about what we're seeing right now in the markets today is that everybody wants to spend and spend and spend and spend and spend, right? And it is impossible to get the 10-year bond rate to come down if your government is constantly spending. The reason you can't get a 3% mortgage anymore isn't because there's no 3% mortgages. We could absolutely do it. But when no one has confidence in the amount of debt you have as a country, they don't have any confidence in your ability to keep your expenses in check. You have to basically pay people to buy your debt, right? So instead of paying people whatever 2%, 3%, because you're so unstable, you have to pay them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9%, right? The interest rate goes up. There's an inverse relationship with what happens with this 10-year bond. So the more you guys have to pay people to take on your debt, the higher that bond goes, right? So when that bond goes up, the ability for you to get a cheap mortgage goes way down, So it's kind of an interesting thing. So the idea behind all this is that what we have now is we have a lock, right? Everyone is locked up. The person that has a 3% mortgage is not going to sell their home to somebody to go get a 6% mortgage. It's not going to happen. There's no incentive. And the truth is that when most people want to sell a home, they generally want to move up, right? So very difficult to get someone, who's again paying whatever $3,000 a month for a 3,000 square foot home to then go pay $6,000 a month for that same 3,000 square foot home, So we have to break the cycle. And how do we do this? Okay, here it is. I got it for you guys. So what you need to do is you need to essentially find a buyer and a seller. Okay, so the way this thing works is that the only way anything happens is if there's a transaction. Okay, so the buyer wants to purchase a home. The seller wants to sell a home. Okay, they meet up, right? They create a transaction. This transaction then kicks in, and the federal government will then pay the buyers. Will pay to buy down the buyer's loan rate, right? So if today it's 6%, they're going to pay to buy it down to 4. Okay, now the seller will also get the same thing when they go buy a home, right? So the seller will have essentially 6 months to then go people understand about the housing market. So what you guys have to understand is that if this transaction costs the basically $5,000 for the buyer, $5,000 for the seller, paid for by the federal government, right? If this transaction costs that much money, okay, how many transactions are there in a year? Okay, so what you guys have to understand about the housing market is there is approximately 4.5 million transactions a year. Okay, that's kind of the average. Okay, now if you end up with a situation where the federal government is essentially buying down the mortgage for a buyer and buying down the mortgage for a seller, okay, this is going to cost $10,000. Okay, you spread that out over 5 years, right? So we do this with this program for 5 years. Okay, 4.5 million transactions. If you institute a program like this, it will essentially double sales right away. Like there's no doubt about it. The traction will pick up very quickly, right? Which this is immediate rocket fuel for the economy, which everyone will say, oh, inflation, because that's a big thing. Hold that thought, okay? So we have a buyer and we have a seller, right? We're buying down 2% for the buyer. We're buying down 2% for the seller. This gets people in that 4% range. This is the thing that will get people to move. Because the truth is, guys, prices are not going to come down for a long time until you get more inventory into the market, right? Until there's more supply, the demand is not going to be, you're not going to quench the demand, right? So this program, that's the great thing about it, is that it actually brings more demand onto the market as well, okay? How does that happen, okay? Listen to this, all right? So who can access this particular program? Okay, this is a big thing for me. You know me, I do not like corporations. I do not like billion-dollar companies basically buying up competition and removing your ability to have choice within the marketplace. Okay, so what happens is you have to be a single or a couple in order to access this program, right? If you're a seller, you can absolutely be a home seller. You can be a Lennar, you can be a Pulte, you can be a DR Horton, any of these large companies. Okay, now hear me out. So you have to be a single or a couple in order to buy a home, okay? You have to be a single or a couple or a home builder to sell a home, okay? You cannot be an LLC. You cannot be an incorporated person. No corporations or incorporated businesses, LLCs, S Corps, none of these people are able to buy homes, all right? The point of buying a home is not so that people can turn over. Flippers, these kind of people, again, flippers need not apply. It's not going to happen, okay? The idea is to get people out of homes that don't want to be there because they have a super low interest rate and they can't leave, and get people that are, again, the average age for a first-time homebuyer is 41 years old, guys. That is unsustainable as a country. That is death for a country, okay? That's death for a civilization. You can't have that. So we're getting younger people, right, to be able to afford homes. So you get it moving on the buyer side and you get it moving on the seller side. Okay, now here's the crazy thing, and I didn't understand this until I really started crunching the numbers. But so this program basically costs $40 billion a year. Okay, that number sounds big, but it's nothing. Okay, excuse me, I said that wrong. It costs $80 billion a year. Spread out over 5 years, it's $400 billion for 5 years. Okay, now here's the thing. So when you go from selling 4.5 million homes a year, right? This is the transaction, buyer to seller. You go 4.5 million of those, okay? You basically double it, right? So we're going to 9 to 10 million transactions a year because there is massive pent up demand for people who want to get the fuck out of their house, right? There are so many people that want to leave, but when you have super low interest rates, you can't do it. It makes no sense, right? So, what happens to all the ancillary industries around the housing market? In case you guys didn't know this, the largest industry in America is housing. It's the largest, okay? And the problem is that we went from people that work with their hands, right? People that manufacture things. We went over to finance, right? They call it services, but it's mostly finance, right? So what we've done is we've tailored our economy to essentially appease financial industries, the people that work in finance that give out loans, that are into debt markets and things like that. It's not good for the average person. Okay, so listen to this. This is wild. So the standard number that is used by economists and so-called experts is essentially zero point 0.5 jobs for every home that is sold. Right? This is freaking crazy. Okay, so you basically double the number of transactions, which obviously is going to create an immediate demand in retail, in construction, in remodeling, in people buying carpet, cabinets, furniture, paint, so many things, right? You're going to have an increase in inspectors. You're going to have an increase in appraisers. You're going to have an increase in title companies, mortgage companies. Everything grows, right? And again, the cost we said is $400 billion for this to happen. Okay, now what happens on the employment side? This is the wildest thing, guys. So what happens on the employment side is you go from, so let me check my notes. I want to make sure I get all these numbers correct. I don't want to mislead you guys. So if I go back over here, so all right, so you create zero point 0.5 jobs created per transaction, right? So the average salary for someone that works in the trades, we're going to assume is about $60,000, right? That's the number. Okay, now you take $60,000, you go to the federal tax rate, which is essentially 15%, right? That basically means that you're adding $9,000 in income with a new job. Okay, when you create that job, parse that over 5 years, that's $45,000, right? Now tack on, right? You're basically going to create about 20 million ish jobs. Give it maybe 15, maybe 20, could be more, could be less, somewhere in there. Okay, that's $900 billion in revenue. All right, $900 billion. Now, again, the numbers are let's say the numbers are half off, right? Let's say those numbers are half off, right? We only bring in $400 billion, $450 billion. Okay, the program literally pays for itself from dummy math, right? From a guy like me who never graduated high school. Like, it literally pays for itself. You end up getting the housing market moving. You end up spurring demand for more industries in America than you could possibly fathom, right? Instead of people looking to outsource everything to China, they're looking to buy stuff here in America, right? They're looking to, for people to come in and put in new windows. They're looking for people to do concrete work. They're looking for people to come in and do drywall, maybe do roofing. The growth is wild, right? And the reason nobody is talking about this plan, right? And we did a version of this back in the 70s. You guys can go Google it, but the reason no one is talking about this is because it doesn't benefit politicians and it doesn't benefit banks. That's it. That's it, right? So everything these guys want to pass, they basically want to pass something that costs $50 billion, $100 billion, $200 billion, $1 trillion, right? This program only costs money if transactions happen. That's it. And everything we're saying is estimated. So say it's a complete flop, right? Instead of moving an extra 4 million units a year, say you move an extra 500,000 units, okay? 500,000 times, $10,000 per transactions. I don't know what that is, like it ends up costing $5 billion, a year instead of whatever, $80 billion a year, right? So if there's demand, the program then ramps up, right? If there's no demand, the program doesn't ramp up. And this is the thing that politicians hate. They hate the idea of something only working if it's successful, right? What they like to do is they love to just give out money every year, right? And then if it doesn't work, well, they give out more money, right? I've told you guys a story when I used to work, when I used to be a young furniture maker. We used to sell furniture to local municipalities, school districts, fire departments, city council, police departments, all this kind of stuff. Well, every year we would get a flood of orders because all these people had to spend all their money, right? They didn't spend all their money, they wouldn't get as much or more next year. That's how government works. This program doesn't work like that, right? It only works if there's a transaction. Only if you get a buyer who is willing to buy a home that costs less than $500,000, and only someone that sells a home that is looking to buy another home less than $750,000, right? You marry those two things up, which is most people in America. You marry those two things up, you have a transaction, you buy the rate down, everyone's off to the races. The young people are happy because now they can actually afford a home. The people that want to get out of houses, they're happy because now they can go buy a new home and not have to pay some crazy astronomical price. The federal government wins because not only are they getting added tax dollars, they're getting more workers, more people off welfare, more people learning job skills, right? Everybody wins. And so I'm going to put this thing together in a better format. I'm going to send this thing over to Josh Hawley, who is our senator here in the state of Missouri. I would send it to someone in Illinois, but Illinois senators are worthless. I would never even try to send something to those. They're horrible. So we'll try to do something with this Josh Hawley. But I'm putting this video out. I wanted to talk about this thing, and I know I didn't put Epstein or Trump or anything in the title, so very difficult to get people to watch this kind of stuff. But I'm going to continue to talk about this because when I crunch the numbers, when I run this through AI, all the numbers work. Everything works. It works for the buyer. It works for the seller. It spurs demand for everything that is housing related, which is most jobs in America, believe it or not. So I think it's a really important thing. If you get a chance, you want to know more about this, you want to work with me on this thing, you have ideas, you want to punch holes in this argument. I want to know. I want to hear from people. And again, I hope people see this in my stream. I'm going to put shorts out about this thing, and I'm going to work on this thing because I'm tired of politicians and people that claim to be experts trying to tell people how to move the housing market. Oh, they'll say, oh, just wait, just give us time. It's always next year. It's always, well, we got to give it to the rich people. We got to give it to the large corporations, and the average person can wait, right? This program works immediately, right? And it only starts costing money if it works, and which is probably why it'll never get any traction. But it's fantastic type of situation, and I've never heard of anything that would work this well for the housing market. So anyway, that's my spiel today. It's going to be a short video. We've got nobody in here commenting. And again, because it's not the kind of video that draws in eyeballs. What I'm learning about these streams is that people like to complain a lot. Very few of them actually like to do anything. Everyone is just full of negativity and doom, not full of optimism and ideas. So that's what this video is about. I hope you guys have a great day, and we will do this again. We'll get to more salacious stuff for you guys on Friday, right? So have a great one.